I think we're all here, and I show 7 o'clock on official Red Hook time, even though the NT clock's about a minute behind. So welcome, and if we call rise to pledge the flag and open the meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, welcome. This is May 14th, 2018 Village of Red Hook meeting. It seems kind of late, doesn't it, board meeting? 14th of May is kind of late in the month for us. Seems like a long time since our last meeting. We do have some guests, both residents and from school and library here tonight. So I thought what we could do is interrupt our normal course of business and switch to allowing the school and the library to go first. The guests are welcome to go first if you so choose, or you can wait for the whole meeting, whatever you prefer. But with that being said, it's the normal course in the May meeting for the school administration folks to come and introduce their budget to us, and I'll have to hand you this mic. You can stand by the lectern.
All right, well, I thank you for letting us go first. My name is Paul Finch, Superintendent of Schools. Oh, boy.
No throwing chairs, Daniel.
Thank you for letting us go first. My wife thanked you even more. So I've been out a lot. We've been out a lot over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Budget votes tomorrow. It's unusual that we're bumping right up against it. So the folks that see this will see this after the budget vote probably. So we've got lots of really terrific things going on in Red Hook still. I will tell you that this budget cycle was a little bit different. Challenging, probably it reminds me a little bit of like 2009, 2010. We always start with a rollover budget, and we look and we say, okay, so what would it cost us to do the same thing next year that we're doing this year? And typically because of salaries, negotiated settlements, health benefits, that sort of thing, the expenditure budget wants to move between 4% and 6%, so that leaves us with a gap of about $1 million, $1.2 million typically. And I used to sweat over that. Now I go, okay, we're going to hopefully have a couple things that break our way, and we'll be able to cobble it together and make it work and get under the cap. We're under the cap this year, so that's the good news. We're under the cap at 2.17%. But it took a lot more to get under the cap. And if you read my the budget newsletter, you see that you probably have it on your fridge, right? Got it framed somewhere. You'll see that we had cost overruns in special education, and we're very careful not to blame special education. It was just the thing this year that really pushed us into a really difficult spot. Instead of 1.2 million, we were looking for 1.9 million. We had 8 retirements, and we decided that we would not replace 5 of those teachers. 4 at the secondary level and 1 at the elementary level, and then 1 teacher aide that we know of right now. And believe it or not, all that cutting and breakage, the difference between bringing a new teacher in, an old more seasoned teacher leaving, and a new teacher, the breakage is the difference in salary. All that really probably gave us maybe about $800,000 towards the 1.9. So we were still looking, even after the cuts. We did get a little, I wouldn't say savings, but it wasn't as bad as we have experienced in the last few years. The health insurance, because that's a big expense for us, as you probably are experienced a similar thing. We didn't have state aid really break our way like we have at other times in the past. We recognized a couple $100,000, and we're taking the rest out of fund balance, and then that's really the story for the year, and we'll make it work. We took some out of facilities, so we're going to delay some projects, but as you know, it comes back to bite you eventually. We're taking some out of technology, not going to replace a computer lab, an upgrade that we had planned to do, and we'll live to fight another day. Really great stuff happening in Red Hook. The kids will have really rich experiences. You're probably wondering what will the losing the 5 teachers do. I think it will be, wouldn't go so far as to say minimal, I would say moderate. impact, not a significant impact to opportunities for kids. We're really working hard to get creative and think about how we might cover some classes or put classes on a rotation at the high school, this sort of thing, to make sure that those opportunities still exist for kids. So that's the story in a nutshell. And Bruce will give you some more information on the board. The real interesting thing this year is we have an interesting board run. So we have 4 candidates for 1 seat.
So I've been doing, Paul really covers the landscape pretty thoroughly, but I've been doing a brief sort of what I would call financial philosophy to sort of backfill some of what he just talked about. So here we are going into what I believe is our 7th tax cap budget, and we will for the 7th time consecutively be tax cap compliant. But every year since the beginning, we've been coming out and telling you folks and everybody else who will listen that structurally the tax cap does not work for the reasons that Paul described. So we have 80% of our budget, which is salary and benefits, and just to pick a number, it probably wants to move in roughly the 4% range. And then the other part of our budget has some very volatile things in it, special ed, energy prices, and the like. So now you've got a budget that wants to move 4, 5%. And we're on a tax cap that typically boils down to 2%. One year we did a 12 basis point cap, 0.12. And state aid in a good year might go 3%. So pretty quickly, you see those numbers don't add up. Your revenues and your expenditures have to move at the same rate. We come out every year and we say, look, it doesn't work. Well, how have we done that? How have we put together 7 consecutive tax cap compliant budgets? And we're still moving forward and talking about what it'll look like next year. Those of you that have been around for a while, you remember maybe 5 years ago, we experienced an audit from the New York Office of the New York State Comptroller. And you'll remember that that report was highly critical of some budgetary surpluses that we had run and also of our fund balance and reserves. Those monies that we were maintaining at the time put us just a hair above being in the bottom 25% of districts in terms of the kind of fund balance that we maintain. And that's measured as fund balance as a percentage of annual expenditures. So that's a fair comparison around the state, whether you've got a $3 million budget or a $300 million budget. That ranking is a fair comparison because it's your fund balance as a percentage of your annual expenditures. Well, it's that fund balance and that budgetary surplus that the comptroller was so critical of that has allowed us to get through 7 cycles of tax cap compliant budgets without dramatically reducing or devastating program. And it's really no more complex than that. So you look back 6, 7 years ago, we were running budgetary surpluses, and those have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller up until this year, where a couple of months ago I was projecting that with that special education overrun, we would probably be about $500,000 in deficit when we got to the end of the year. As part of our strategy, we kind of turned down the spigot on anything that looked at all discretionary, and it looks like we may come in a little closer to break even, but still no more budgetary surpluses, and we dig into fund balance. So now where we sit around the state is we've actually dropped down into, a little bit below that 25% level, we've now dropped into the bottom 25% of districts in terms of the size of our fund balance as it compares to our annual expenditures. When this whole thing started, people said, well, okay, so if the math doesn't work, what's your strategy? And we said, well, our strategy is don't be the first to fail, because nobody at the state level has any appetite right now to change the tax cap, and I don't think they will have until they see local municipalities or school districts start to run out of money. You look just to our south and you see what happens when you try to do a non-tax cap compliant budget. Last year Rhinebeck did that. By the way, they are the 11th lowest fund balance as compared to annual expenditures in the state, so they're way down near the bottom. And last year they decided that the way they needed to address that was to try to go over the tax cap. And in years prior, just like Red Hook, they'd passed very easily in the 65-70% passing rate. When they went to go over the tax cap, they passed by, I believe, 7 votes last year. So it becomes very difficult, and yet it's really the only way to work around the tax cap. The other choice is really unthinkable, reductions to the local educational program. So. Or some kind of relief from the state, whether it come in the form of reduced mandates or in the form of more money on the side of state aid. So that's sort of my philosophical tax cap rant, and thank you for listening through that. And here we are. Tomorrow is the day. So on the ballot tomorrow, there are some other things besides the budget. As Paul mentioned, there is a board race, and there's 4 candidates running for a single seat. Dean Button, Lauren Arcamano, Dan Rinaldi, and Kate Corpus are all running for that single seat, so they're on the ballot for the board election. We have a bus and vehicle proposition, and it's a little larger this year than it historically is. In the last number of years, we've typically been between $250,000 and $300,000 on the bus and vehicle proposition. That would typically enable us to buy probably 2 full-size buses, and then something smaller, a van or a wheelchair van or something like that. We've fallen much further behind on our 10-year replacement cycle than where we would like to be. Actually, if this one passes, the buses that we will be surplusing are 2005s at this point, most of them. So we've fallen farther behind our 10-year replacement plan cycle than we would like to be. So this year's bus and vehicle proposition is at $550,000. If that passes, it would enable us to do 4 full-size buses, 2 Expeditions, and a Ford Fusion. And those smaller vehicles will help us to hopefully take back some of the special ed transportation runs that only have 1 or 2 students on them, and we think that that will be more efficient. In the time that I've been in Red Hook, we have always paid cash for our buses. In our vehicles out of fund balance, out of surplus funds. And that's been a pretty good investment because not only have we avoided interest costs, but the state aids us over a 5-year period as if we'd paid interest, so they assume that we borrowed and paid an interest rate. And in a world where we put our money in bank CDs and treasuries and the like, and we were earning 12 basis points, that was actually a pretty good return to have the state aiding us on interest that we actually never paid. I can say, though, this year, based on the financial position that we've talked about, that I can virtually guarantee that if this bus proposition passes, we will borrow for at least a portion of the bus proposition, if not all of the bus proposition. We will not be in a financial position where I would recommend spending out that cash at this point. The final proposition on the ballot is the Red Hook Library, and they're here this evening, so I'll let them talk to that. But they are coming back for a funding for their ongoing expenses. So once again, really nothing left in the timeline other than the budget vote is tomorrow from noon to 9 at the Mill Road Elementary School and the 3-5 cafeteria. And with that, I would let the library talk, and then we'll be happy to answer questions.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Dawn. I'm the director at Red Hook Public Library, and thank you for giving us a few minutes as well. The library, as most of you know, is a pretty busy place. We had over 80,000 people visit the library last year, and we had a record year in terms of programming with 14,000 people. So we're continuing to grow. We had increased circulation, believe it or not, last year, which is pretty unusual in the library world, as libraries are becoming more and more places where people gather and collaborate and use services. But our circulation actually grew. And our collection is changing a little bit as well. Last year we added unusual items to the collection, sewing machines, we have a telescope, we have coding toys for kids. This summer we're hoping to add Kindles, hotspots that you can take home, Spheros, which are little adorable little robot toys. And let's see, this year we have more teens hanging around at the library, which is actually a lot of fun. if teens are going to hang around together after school, they might as well be at the library, although they do eat a lot. And we started a new series of programs called All Abilities for patrons from, teens and adults with special needs. Our program coordinator, Amy, runs those up, and they're very popular and in demand. We actually had another institution seek and receive a grant to bring their special needs students to our program, which is kind of neat. And I guess that's about all that's new. Amy, can you think of anything else? This is Amy Houston. She's one of our board members. The summer programs. Yeah, summer programs are huge. We did a lot of art last year, and it was extremely popular, and the kids enjoyed showing their work so much that this year we obtained a grant through Asienzo Foundation to contract with Cocoon Theater, and Cocoon Theater artists, Andreas and Marguerite Sanmian, will be working with us all summer long with the kids. So that's really exciting. And then August 11th, there'll be a show, and it will be all about growing up in Red Hook. So we definitely want to invite you all to come to that. But then, all that said, our expenses increase just like everybody else's do. We have 15 employees, 4 are full-time. And we like to think that we contribute to the economy of Red Hook. We bring a lot of people here. But we are asking for a small increase this year, $10,000, which is within our tax cap and is about 2.77% of our budget, and will cost the owner of a $250,000 home about $2.04. And if you have any questions, the vote is tomorrow, but if you have any last-minute questions, you can call me, early in the day at the library, Facebook message me, whatever. Everybody knows where to find me, so thank you.
Okay, generally what we do is we have these folks a little bit more in advance of the vote day. So when we open up the meeting, we're later, just a fluke of the May sequence of when the days hit, and the second Monday is today. But I was wondering, our general routine is we have any questions from the board would be asked to the presenters, and then if anybody from the audience had a question too. But just going up and down, I know I usually have my perspective, which I'll hold for now. But so essentially you're all saying a few micro points over 2%. Maybe you could explain that a little bit, meaning a 2% cap, there are formulas where you can carry over a little bit from a prior year and so forth, and that's what you're talking about. We went through that with our board and when we passed our budget. But the one question, when you mentioned the $2.57, whatever is that new money, like on top of what somebody paid last year? It'd be $2. You said it'd be an increase or something? Okay.
Yeah, that's additional per year.
Okay.
I have a question for Paul real quick. With the 5 secondary school teachers that you're not replacing, would that affect the student-teacher ratio, or would that affect?
Good question.
I know the programming you said would be covered, but.
Yep, really good question. So since I started, we've gone down about 400 students. So we were 2,300 and change, like 2,360, I think it was. Now we're down to a little over 1,900 students. Over my first 7-8 years, we took most of the staffing cuts at the elementary school. We haven't taken as many at the secondary level. So I don't think it will impact student-to-teacher ratio.
So you're following the trend from which was started in elementary up to
secondary. So this is off the top of my head from memory. We had a net loss of about 8 faculty members at the elementary school, and I want to say 2 to 3 at the secondary level over this same time period. So I think I know there's wiggle room there to pull back a little bit. Problem in the secondary world is you can't, in the elementary school, it's easy to say, okay, you have X number of kids and X number of teachers, and you divide it, and there you go. But in the secondary world, if you want to go down one teacher now, you're thinking, okay, well, the student has English and social studies and math, so am I pulling out a 0.2 of an FTE and a 0.2 of an FTE and a 0.2 and a 0.2? And it gets very complicated from a scheduling perspective and also from a human resource perspective, because now if you're pulling back people that have full-time jobs and making them part-time, they're looking for full-time jobs, and you're creating a problem for yourself in terms of holding on to people. So the reason why we're able to do it is really enrollment.
Okay.
But if we were, if your question was, what do you do next year if you're faced with the same fact pattern? I would say to the board, okay, so we're sort of at a decision point here. Do we want to maintain program, or do we want to really start to impact opportunities for kids? And my recommendation would be, if we have to inch over to maintain opportunities, of course we want to maintain opportunities. But that's really a board decision at the end of the day.
You're seeing a trend in the elementary schools right now of increased enrollment?
It's pretty stable, I would say. It's
steady, right?
stabilized somewhat, and it's consistent with our demographic survey from 2008. I think the farthest they went out was 2019, and as I recall, they had us, if you looked at the middle line, they had us at about 1,900, and that's right about where we are. So they were pretty accurate at the time. But I've said to Bruce, I think we should really do a new demographic study and see what's with some of the new development that's planned and whatnot. See if there's something on the horizon that we need to be planning for.
Anything else from the board? Anybody from the field, the audience? George? Okay. Good. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for
And,
having us. Thanks for putting us on first.
You're welcome to hang out and
Appreciate it.
see what we do the rest of the night. But,
How would I explain that to my wife?
pardon me?
How would I explain it to my wife? Just
You were
decided to hang out and
you
see
were
what they were
intrigued
doing.
by the energy and the,
with the 3 kids at home. Thank you for having us.
Right.
Right, exactly.
You can leave that on this podium there.
And I just wanted to thank all of you for helping making Red Hook such a great place to live. And I think the quality of life that you offer the public is exceptional. So thank you very much. And
Ed and I can I share our little text exchange the other day?
Oh, sure, sure.
Okay, so as fate would have it, over time I've had parents come to me, and I'm sure you've had community members come to you about the crossing at Benner Road and the high school there, because it's a challenge, right? And you already are very generous in providing a crossing guard for the Phillips Street crossing. And I had a parent who asked again about it and suggested, can't we just at least get like one of those flashing lights that they have down here in down by, I think, the town hall and down by Holy Cow or whatever. And so I emailed or texted Ed, and he said, you guys are already on top of 4 of those, I think 4 of those crossings, right? And so I would strongly encourage you to consider the high school crossing at Benner Road as one of those. If we can't have a crossing guard, and I know that can be cost prohibitive, that might help. So thank you for thinking about that.
Behind you in the visual background, I put, actually, DOT responded to me, because you and I were talking about it last week, and ironically, about the same time I was asking them, hey, it's spring season again. What we're talking about, we have an $88,000 grant that we rolled over into DOT projects where they were going to actually do the work for us with their contractors or themselves. But we had kind of a funny story. Brent and I were at a meeting with them, last December, roughly. We had the regional director, which is pretty big to get them into our building, and then some engineers and so forth. And to them, $88,000 is like a drop in a bucket. It's when we were all excited when we got it, and we went down to our first visits with them. They're like, oh my God, how are we even going to deal with figuring out how to push $88,000 through our system to you? But at the last meeting, we got somewhat bad news, and to me it was a little ridiculous, to be honest. It was they said that they can't buy any more of those particular rigs. I'll call it a rig. It's the flashers that go around the stop for pedestrian upright signs we have over in different crosswalks. And why? And they said, well, there's a patent trademark suit pending, and the manufacturer is being sued, and the state of New York can't buy any more of them. So one of the questions is, well, how'd the town get some? And they were already ordered and bought and in the pipeline before the suit came through. So we're just reminding them the springtime here again, like, okay. And I got this big, convoluted, I don't know, it's like answer here. But essentially, we're still in the pipeline, and they didn't answer me if the lawsuit's been settled, which I can't quite imagine. How do you trademark, push a button, the light comes on, and they're solar powered, but somehow somebody, I guess, put a trademark on it or a patent. And so long story short, we are working on it. And we always plead for some reason, this one works fairly well. We can put our little temporary sign here. But believe me, I babysit that sign probably 4 days a week because
I'll bet.
trucks hit it or
Yep.
different things. It ends up in different places. And, but the New York drivers just don't seem to want to acknowledge that a pedestrian has a right of way when they're in the crosswalk. And even here, it's where they're going a little slower, but the Benner Road.
We worry because at
Things.
199, you're coming down off the hill and it's a natural,
Well,
you're
yeah,
coming
they're
faster.
going
than-
40 coming in
Yep.
to 30, and I try to, when I do a walk, I cross there, but you can't expect them to stop.
Yep.
But it is,
You could be our crossing guard, though, if
Yeah,
you
right.
want. I'll take you.
yeah, right, I don't know. But we are still pushing that.
Thank you. Well, thank you
And
for doing that.
What's ironic is
Appreciate
the library had the same question. It was like something in the ether the other day, because about 2 or 3 days, I think she heard street talk about your talk.
it. She wanted in. She wanted in.
But
Yep.
anyway, but thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. What we could do, we have 2 choices, board. We didn't start our real formal meeting yet, but we do have a crowd here. Like I said, you're welcome to hang out. Generally, we do public comment toward the end of our meeting. We have some folks that routinely attend, but that could be an hour and a half from now. It's maybe even a little more. I would offer you 2 options. You could hear us, what we do every month rather, or you could present. I see you handed, I didn't get a chance to read it. Some of the board might have been able to read it, but if you wanted to present a spokesperson or all of you or what, I think we could get that now. Usually we listen, we'll react, but I hear talking out there. Is there one spokesperson or do you want to talk or? Yeah. What we would ask is if you go to the lectern area and just say who you are and talk into the mic, and I'll read fast while he's walking over.
My name's Ray Keeler. I presented everybody a copy of this letter that we wrote to the village board. If you don't mind, I'd just like to read it real quick.
Sure. That'll save me, okay.
The residents of Prince Street have complained to the mayor about the BART bus coming down a residential street, but nothing has been done to stop it. It has come to our attention that the BART bus is a Class 7 vehicle weighing 26,000 to 33,000 pounds without any passengers. The legal weight limit on the side roads in the village of Red Hook is 5 tons. This vehicle greatly exceeds the maximum weight limit. Weight limits are there for a reason. We just had new roads put in and they are built to withstand a certain weight limit. This issue is amplified in the spring when the frost is coming out of the ground. Repair of these roads falls on the Red Hook Village taxpayers. Some of, but not all of, the other concerns the village residents have about this commercial bus on a residential street are as follows. At times we park on the street. We've been told by the police to move our cars because this bus can't make the turn with our cars parked on the street. You can't even leave your car in front of your house to unload groceries. This is a residential area that has a commercial bus passing by every hour during the day into the evening. With the noise level of a commercial bus sitting on the front porch is not a relaxing, quiet evening as it should be in the village. It's not safe for people to walk the street, especially after the village narrowed them. There isn't enough room to walk on the street when 2 cars are passing by, let alone a large bus. Last Halloween, BART didn't even change their bus schedule and continued to use the same route even with all the kids and parents out trick-or-treating. The increase of traffic on the side streets is bad enough without allowing commercial vehicles. The same bus rarely makes a full stop at the intersection of Prince and Church Streets. With the newly narrowed streets, it's only a matter of time before someone gets seriously injured. Knowing that this bus is way over the weight limit, where does the liability fall if someone does get hurt? On Bard College or the village of Red Hook? We are presenting this issue to the board with hopes that they will fix the problem so the residents will not have to take further action on their own. Sincerely, concerned Red Hook Village residents.
Thank you.
I know some other people would like to comment as well. And, like I said, it is a residential area, and we have kids riding bicycles and skateboards and people walking the street on a daily basis, and in the evening, people pushing baby carriages. And so we don't need commercial traffic down a residential street. So I don't know.
Hey, Mrs. Keeler, if your son could walk you the mic, that would work.
It's not just once or twice. It's not just once or twice. The bus comes down our street every hour. On the half hour, comes down Prince Street over Church to West Market. Every hour and a half hour. It starts about 5 after 8 in the morning, 10 minutes to 9. By 9:30 in the morning, that bus is coming down our street every hour and a half hour, and it goes right into the night. Now, Ray has pictures of the bus tonight at 6:30 down on a corner, and he did not stop. He did not stop tonight. It happens a lot. And I'm sorry, I just think if you live where I live, you would not like it. You know, it's not good. Okay? Now, let me explain a little bit to you. When the bus comes down the street, it is so big, when it gets down on the corner of Church and Prince, it has to be way over on the left side of Prince Street, all right, to make the turn onto Church. If there's a car at the stop sign on Church Street, the car has to go. The bus cannot make the turn because that bus needs the whole width to go around the turn. Now, if that car happens to be coming up to Prince Street, it's totally out of luck because the bar bus is sitting in the middle of the street. Now, if there are cars coming over Church Street from West Market Street, a lot of them, which we'll discuss some other time, coming over Church Street, and the bus is making the turn, guess who moves? Those cars stop, back up, and move over so the bus can go. And there's cars following the bus. There's cars following that bus, like over here, and they're getting annoyed. Like Barbara and Jean, a lot of times they can't get out of the driveway because cars are backed up behind the bus, waiting for kids to get on and off the bus. And it's not a good situation at all. And it's not necessary. I mean, this bus is way over the limits to be on our residential streets.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to talk?
I've written many letters and there's nothing more I can say. I think you all recognize.
I'm Charlie Rubin. I was just wondering if you could explain to us why it's not being enforced. I hadn't realized that sign was there until someone pointed it out to me, but why aren't the police just stopping it every hour, giving me a ticket and putting an end to it? Why is this going on?
I can explain, but if you look at our code, and I will say that this is certainly not a new issue. I'm glad you came in tonight, but it's we're looking at something, and probably for the past 4 or 5 years, I would say that this has been an issue. I think it got nastier when Bard, unannounced to anybody, bought that bigger bus, like just a square, big thing they used to use. It used to look more like an airport shuttle, something a little less visible, and I don't know if it was less noisy or anything like that. But and I have had, and several of us had talks with Bard folks. They have a Department of Transportation, the exact precise name of it, but they do have a student transit department. And we've talked with county folks recently with loop bus, some options we're thinking of. But to answer your one question, our code, certain streets do have a 5-ton truck prohibition. In my opinion, it's designed to keep large trucks from using the streets as cut through. We do have a problem with our streets being used as cut through by everybody. One reason we narrowed the streets was to make it less comfortable for people to pass through. Essentially, it's a traffic calming approach is what we're looking to do. And that one corner at West Market, when you come off West Market to Prince and Church there, where we put a bump out, we'll call it, that too was deliberate to try to stifle the traffic, trying to beat the light, shooting down that street there. And has it worked? We don't know. But it was one reason we did that bump out there. But if you look at our code, it does say 5-ton trucks prohibited. And, yeah. Pardon me? I think it says trucks, but we could pull a code. Yeah. But where I was headed is, it does have an exception for local delivery delivery precluded, so there's some exception for deliveries. And when we look out our windows, we have ASAP, Botini, you have like monster trucks that are hauling tons and tons of liquid oil down the streets. And, but they are considered delivery. The UPS truck, the FedEx trucks, they're all servicing. And the question then becomes, and I had this exact discussion with the BART people. The school buses exceed 5 tons. And so a bus is a bus. You use the word in your letter, commercial bus. I'm not sure I buy that description, commercial. And at our side, we've looked at the BART bus. We've heard numbers, and I'm trying to recall them myself. On a given day, it moves about 300 students through the village. The option would be they could all come in 1 in a car, 2 in a car, 3 in a car, whatever that would be. They would probably come down the same streets in their cars. They're going down. When they come in, they're bringing business to the village center, whether it be heading to CVS or the restaurants or wherever, Taste Buds. A lot of them live here and support. A lot of them commute from their apartments in the village to the campus. So they are supporting the economy. And even in the evening, it's okay, they're safer on a bus driving with a professional driver than being in somebody's car that's been out partying at 2 in the morning or something. Pardon me?
That's their responsibility.
It is, but they're still, when they all got killed up in Tivoli, it was not a good thing. And anyway, it's a struggle. I've sat with the director of the transit department and explained to him, hey, look, that big bus was a bad move. And but they do provide a lot of positive input in general to the economy here, and I think there's safety factors. I think the biggest problem, I just can't get over all the cars that do use our side streets. And when I sat recently, again, it was probably about last January, Dutchess County has a new transportation director, and I brought this situation. I was like, well, look, BART's running buses, and then what Dutchess County used to call a loop bus. Now they dropped that name, but we all know it as a loop. I said, is there a way we can diminish the BART bus traffic? Because the loop bus goes into the BART campus and then comes down and through. And I thought it could help BART too, because they have to hire bus drivers, buy buses, and schedule, and they have to have a whole department running it. Whereas if the county was providing a bus that ran right through the campus and came through here, I don't really know the county's bus schedule. Like, do they go frequently enough for the BART kid that's trying to get to a 10 o'clock class from the village? That part I don't know yet. But so we did entertain that as an option. But I would agree, it's a problem, but I think, quite frankly, there are offsetting benefits, and it's a tough one. But maybe I'll repeat your question because they won't hear. Okay, there you go. Take the mic.
I just wanted to ask why the route couldn't be changed. Why can't the bus stay on a commercial road? Why does it have to come down this particular residential street and go in front of the nursery school and the church? And,
well, believe me,
and the 2 bus stops are right next to each other.
We've puzzled with that, and a bunch of us have tried to draw alternate routes. And to be honest, nothing works except putting them through private property, which one idea is like throw them into Ken Geeks, the KDK, the parking lot across here, and loop them out. It doesn't really work logistically because in winter season, we plow our roads. The private owners don't necessarily plow as frequently as we plow, so the buses couldn't get in. One bus I know makes a route where it goes all the way down to Hannaford, drops off, and then turns back north. And, could they work that in? And I've sat with the fellow from BART on looking at work we do. We talked about going further out East Market and turning again, but you turn in what used to be Red Hook Electric. There's a big parking lot there. But again, you're asking private property owners to take the liability, and we do provide plowed and professionally cleaned streets.
Well, where did it go Saturday when you had the road and the street closed? Which direction? How did they go Saturday when you had the street closed?
Well, what we do when we have a big event, we notify BARD,
Yeah.
And I wasn't here, I was away this past week, but did anybody see where they were turning or anything?
Wherever they go, they could take that route all the time.
Yeah, it's,
I didn't see
It
either. I
has to
was here.
stop. It's got to stay off our streets. It's dangerous. It's racing. We have small kids. There's kids. No. Another thing, now, on Prince Street here, since you made the street 20 feet, we have to be very careful how we park because we can't block the board bus. And God forbid, don't block the bus because they come running to the police department. I'm serious.
Knock at my door.
Yes, me too. They came and asked me if I'd move my car. My car was in front of my house. And they come and asked me if I'd move my car because the BART bus could not make the turn. Now, that's ridiculous.
well, I think, I'm not going to, you're allowed to park on the street. I think there was a little bit of point, and I'm a little tongue-in-cheek, there was a little bit of civil unrest on the street there where they were parked in sequences where it was hard for the bus to
Right.
get through.
We
So,
can't
to be
park
fair, it
buses.
wasn't just one person unloading their groceries, it was more. And again, I'm not condoning it or condemning it, it's just the way it is. We're
We're
dependent.
Continue each route down to Hannaford and turn around and come back.
That was brought up, and it's a whole scheduling thing. And to be honest, I'd have to have that guy in here and talk to him again. But it was not every bus goes to Hannaford, and it's
But how much
It's,
further is it, considering they have to stop here, stop there, how much further is it just to go down there and turn around? Is it another 5 minutes or something, to add to their schedule?
I definitely brought it up to him because that was, to me, it made most sense. You're in there, it's a street pretty much all the way into the grocery store, and then you turn around. But
Yes. It goes around and around until 2, 3 in the morning.
People,
Now, why is it doing that? Why is it?
residents have bedrooms on the street. You have to listen to this bus all night going through every hour. I don't think
Well,
there's
yeah,
some
I'm not gonna-
board members that live in the village. And I don't think you guys, or anybody that has a house here, would like the bus going by their house at ungodly hour in the evening, every hour.
Well, I guess from my perspective, I believe in community, and Bard is part of the community. They bring a lot of assets,
How much
and
taxes does the BART pay?
well, they pay
How
no.
much taxes does BART pay?
Okay, I'm not going to get in arguments, but they pay none.
Part of the
It's a loaded
community, I
question.
wanna know how much taxes they pay.
Well, they paid no property tax,
Okay.
but they have a payroll of, I think, about $64 million. The students and the parents probably bring another $100 million to the economy in a year. I don't know the number for that, but anyway, I think what we can do as a board is good. You came in. We have looked at this many different angles, and believe me, we don't deliberately want a bus coming down the street either, but we haven't been able to find an answer. And, one route versus another route, timing.
What do they do on Hardscrabble and Apple Blossom? What route do they take?
I really don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I know they can't go down the street, but,
Find out.
yeah.
All they have to do is take the same route, whatever they took Saturday.
If they can't do that, why can't we have them stop going through these streets at least 10 o'clock at night? There's no need for them to have to go. There's no traffic. They can find alternate routes in.
Well,
It's
again,
easy just to sit there and say, the community and everything else.
Mm.
But what about us?
Well, I would think-
We are a small minority in the village, and, and it's just like, well, forget about you. There is no
Mm-hmm.
solution for you.
well, I think you're misconstruing something there, but, George, you have a comment back there?
Yes, it's a sacred cow. They can do whatever they want.
That's not true.
It's true.
George,
I
come on.
had the Department of Transportation, I spoke, I think it's Jim Anderson, I'm not familiar with the name, who told me in no uncertain terms that his responsibility was to the students. Forget about us. I'm responsible for my students. But who's responsible for us, if not our village government?
We are. And I think, like we said, there's a weight limit except for delivery. I think it falls at,
Delivering
I-
every half hour. Costco and Bottini aren't coming down every hour.
that's all right. Yeah.
So that's different.
No, it's not.
Twice a day.
That's the first pushback I got, but let's do this. We have to move into our regular meeting. Why don't we have your letter, and we can workshop it a little bit. But quite frankly, we are concerned, and we can see what we can do, but I think the answer personally is with somehow Dutchess County, if they could absorb some of the barge budgetary costs for a bus, and then the county bus doesn't need to come down the street, but we'll see what that is.
Through. We
Pardon
can
me?
do that. We can park our cars on the street so the bus can't get through. How about that? There's no law against us parking on the street.
No, I mean, that's what they call civil disobedience, but I guess if it's impeding safety or traffic, the cops would come talk to you, but it's a,
So you're saying that it's unsafe for us to park on the street, but it's safe for a vehicle that is 3 times the weight limit to go down our street, with kids playing nursery school on Church Street, parents loading and unloading kids. You're saying that's safe, but for us to park on the street, it's unsafe and civil disobedience. Okay,
It doesn't sound like you're planning to do anything.
right.
I guess,
The noise ordinance I brought up. You stared at me and said a few words and nothing ever happened.
well, this board considered your noise ordinance, and we choose what we're gonna do, and we did not feel that there was a need for a noise ordinance in the village, so.
Could we have a meeting facing the board representatives in with the board and or anybody interested in the bus?
I don't see why not. I mean, it's
I've never met anybody.
mm,
And, by the way, I have no fight or any argument with any board student.
mm.
But I also know that the board student who said to go over there to get a bus rather than over there, that student will walk over there. You know, it's not that it's written in stone that they have to go over here. Maybe park them in front of this building.
Pardon me, I'm sorry.
Park them in front of this building.
And it's a big bus.
I know you still have to deal with the turn.
Yeah,
Then work on that traffic.
So Ed,
Maybe Bob could sponsor Hannaford.
before we close out of this, let me say a couple of points here. I read your letter tonight. There's nothing in here that I disagree with. I mean, I choose not to walk my dog up this way because it's very uncomfortable to try and get past. When I come this way in a barred bus, I experience the same thing. I see the ruts at the corner because they can't make the turn. And I reject the fact that there's some sort of equation between a school bus coming through in the morning and in the afternoon with a barred bus. You know, I understand fuel deliveries, I understand garbage pickup, fine and dandy, but, you know, I think just like if it was at my house or your house, that if you had these guys just like me coming by at 2 o'clock in the morning, I don't think it would be that comfortable. And, I mean, these are our roads, and I think we get to say what happens on our roads, and I think we should. So there you go.
By the way, I have to walk my dog here constantly with the bus.
Understood.
And you have the nursery school, and you have the cars parked on either side of the road. And then you have the bus going through, and the bus can't even get through that road because you have the nursery school.
All those little kids are out there
And
with a little tiny fence, 3 feet.
little,
I've seen it.
yeah, you have the little
Being
kids
dropped
there.
off.
And you
Yeah, I
have-
get- well,
you know, you have the kids there trying, you're afraid that they're running, there's a big bus coming around the corner.
They have to pick them up at 11:30, that you have a mother carrying a baby and taking 2 other kids, coming out from between the cars.
And there's cars going like, just around them, not even slowing
Sometimes
down.
the cars don't even stop.
well,
I mean,
I appreciate your comments, and like Jay said, he's read your letter, Jay has a position. The board, we have to move into a regular meeting, so we can work on it. We have some workshops coming up. The good news is, in 2 weeks, the barred bus quasi goes away for the summer for a small bus. So give us a little respite to think of some ideas. It's and thank you for coming, and we'll talk some more. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. Why don't we get to, we've done, open the meeting with the pledge. We have minutes. Since the budget season's over, we only had 2 meetings in April, it looks like. The regular meeting, April 9th, and the workshop meeting, April 19th. I reviewed the minutes, Cindy's distributed them digitally. Were there any additions, alterations, or corrections, and I think I had one, I remember reading when it came to something in Brent's report. Let me think for a moment what it is. Did I send you something, Cindy? Bear with me a second here, folks. He used some dollar numbers, and I wasn't quite sure.
This month's or last month's?
Yeah,
Community
April.
beautification or something?
Yeah, let's see.
ITF.
Those are the only numbers I put in, I think.
Here, and here.
Wasn't that?
The number for easy street cleaning per hour.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was, I think I addressed that, though. I think you had $190, let's see.
Per
Oh,
hour.
right here at the bottom page.
Yeah,
Okay,
then-
wait.
And we got another estimate, which was a lump
because
sum
we
estimate.
ended up taking a second company.
A lump sum, that's what we asked for, we got it.
And who was the second, who won the bid, though? Wasn't
Easy
that,
Street.
he came back with a lump sum? Okay. So what's the wording there? Village received an estimate from Easy Street?
But at the time
Because
of
he
the
came in at
writing-
125, didn't he?
Yeah, it was very reasonable. So actually it came in less than 190 an hour.
Yeah. I guess what I would ask is this, if Brent could find his notes on it, we did have, they originally came in at the $190, but then we got a better price, I remember.
Mhm.
So I would just,
But this is accurate for what the information I had at the time. So,
at the meeting, that was accurate, okay. Okay, I don't have any other additions or corrections. Anybody else? All in favor of accepting those minutes?
I,
Thank you. Well, I think we got it. Today, like we said a few times, May 14th, I think we have, 3 weeks left in the year, the fiscal year. I ran a budget test on May 3rd, which was 92% of the year, so now we're probably at, 95 or something. And the good part is the numbers look pretty strong. Again, I went through, some of our bigger line items to see where we are revenue-wise and where we are expense-wise, and they seem to be holding up pretty well. I don't know if, Cindy, you don't have to read these, but did you have any anecdote? Could you just describe where you think we are with
Actually,
these?
we're in great shape. I only have one payroll left. General fund account balance is $357,000, so we are in really good shape. All the money's in, and all big expenses have been paid.
have we gotten the final bills from the town of Red
Yes,
Hook
we have.
for materials?
I've been told we have.
Mhm.
LoSAP is in, pilot money is in, our last sales tax is in, and all the bonds have been paid, even in water, and I only have one payroll left.
Good.
So we're in good shape.
So Cindy referenced the general fund is $357,788. Water fund has $160,318 in there. Trust and agency, $33,500. Material management, $29,15. General talk a little bit more about material management items coming up. Petty cash, $75. Village green, $4,404. Hardscrabble, $4,623. Health insurance account, $7,904. And as far as expenses in the voucher packs there, general fund, $158,173. Water fund expenses were $32,800. Trust and agency, $33,500. Materials management, $3,446. And it's submitted by the treasurer. What I looked at was one of our biggest budget expense lines is police payroll, and that seems to be pretty much dead on.
We have not received chips yet, so I think I submitted $66,000 in chips.
Yes, I'll give you what we got
So
from
our fund balance will even be that much higher.
DOT. So those numbers are based on where we are now. Not so that'll be my report, though.
Yeah, and then we did get our FEMA paperwork submitted off. They've accepted it at the federal level. We got those notifications. I'm not sure we'll get that before the end of the fiscal year, but it was about $24,000, and they pay about 87.5% between the state and the feds. So whatever 90% of 24 is we'll get about what, $19,000. So that'll be
For Stella.
and that'll actually pay for a storm a year ago plus 3 months. So that'll be good. So it's looking good. So that being said, I would offer a motion that we accept the treasurer's report dated 14 May 2018. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Let's see, police.
I did have
Better.
one question. If I could back up.
Which one?
No, I approved the budget, but this is materials management. So the revenue, or the balance was 2915. The expenses was 35, basically, 34.5. That's just for this month, right? So our expenses exceeded the revenue.
No. The top number is the balance in the checking account, right?
Okay.
And the monthly expenses are 34.
So this is the balance.
So there was about, yeah. Yep. When Jen reports, you'll see on her spreadsheet, income versus, it'll be more direct there. Police report. I was talking with Patrick. They do seem to want to bring in another part-timer, which will probably interview somebody at our workshop meeting. They're still looking at a few folks and vetting a few folks. But a couple of our current part-timers are being hired away by some full-time organizations. And on top of that, I was hearing today that the city of Poughkeepsie is opening up 17 police positions, which disrupts the force a little bit too. Not that any of our guys are actively looking there, but there's only a certain amount of people coming out of the academy and so forth, and it's pulling some folks toward the full-time jobs. That being said, we have Village Board monthly police report totals in our report there. Total incidents were 273. Broke out 210 in the village of Red Hook, 63 in the town, none in Tivoli. Tickets issued were 73. Broke out 47 in the village, 26 in the town, 17 arrests, 8 were in the village, and 9 in the town. I know about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the village residents probably heard a helicopter and so forth at 3 or 4 in the morning. The police did help with state police doing some drug arrests, and I think there were press releases and things that went out on that. And but we were not the direct party, but we were assisting with it. So that was one thing. But that's the news in police, and the details are attached there. I think we could slide to Mr. Trustee Trapp. Are you ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Just wanted to say on the County Planning Federation side of things, we had a really good set of classes this last time. We had a 3-for-2 cost, so you get 3 classes and 3 sets of learning credits, and cost for 2 classes for 10. We feed everybody, and we had, I think, in the neighborhood of 118, maybe 120 people. I think we had the room maxed out. It was pretty good, pretty spirited discussion. We had 2 gentlemen from Department of State come down and do the presentation. They've been there before. They're pretty well seasoned. Our next class is coming up the 31st of this month. It's going to be complete streets, local lessons learned, which might be appropriate for us at this point, talking about these sort of things. So hope to get some of our guys down there from the planning and zoning boards to look at that sort of stuff. And the final class for this part of the year is going to be June 14th, land use mistakes and seeker. it's going to be a good one. A lot of boo-boos. Seeker is often a confusing thing, so hopefully we'll clear up some of them. I think we've got a land use attorney coming down from DOS to talk about seeker, so that should be fun. Also, in another, where I work, there was been some request for me to look at some possible grant money for fire companies, and I'm not sure to what extent our guys, we've discussed it, Ed, about how much that the local fire company may or may not seek grant money to supplement what they've got going on down there. But I found a couple of sites that if you demonstrate a need and provide the proper backup, you can get donations of equipment, turnout gear, and certain things like that. And I'm trying to reach out to the folks and find out just, and it's statewide, it's not county-wide, so it can be accessed by anybody. If I end up writing something for the folks where I work, I would certainly probably copy the information and bring it down here. See if we couldn't interest our guys, or at least find out the things that they need. And so that's just a little aside on that.
Good.
But, yep. And we have, in the planning and zoning world, building department, we had 7 building permits issued in April, 2 certificates of occupancy issued, 2 certificates of compliance issued, 5 municipal searches were conducted. There's a separate report with the fire inspections attached here. A couple of complaints about a sign on Firehouse Lane and some property maintenance at South Broadway. That's all in the report as well. Planning Board had 2 items on the agenda for April 12th. Site plan approval granted to Firehouse Lane, as well as a public hearing for an amendment to a plat for subdivision approval. This was a previously granted at a property on Morgan's Way. The ZBA had no agenda for the past month, and let's see here. The building department took in $769.50.
Oh, you missed
April.
you missed a big digit there. Say it. What does yours say?
1769.50.
Okay. You dropped the 1 on me there. It scared me.
$1,769.50.
There you go. There you go. I like that better.
Yeah, I like that much better myself. So, I think that's it. We'll probably get into some more stuff about the building and zoning department a little later, so I'll just let
Right.
that hang.
Okay, good. Thank you, Jay.
You bet.
Let's see. Just looking at the fire inspection. Let's see. Okay, thank you. Let's see, we could then head for Ms. Norris. You have a lot to talk about, don't you?
I actually don't.
You don't? Okay. We can make you talk more then.
I know, right? All righty. Thank you to the Red Hook Rotary for organizing this past weekend's Apple Blossom Day. The weather wasn't perfect, but there were people out and about. So thank you for them, because it's a ton of work regardless of the weather. So, hooray. Our event, Hardscrabble Day, will be Saturday, September 15th. We're still updating the website with vendor information and still working on a band. So hopefully by next month's meeting, we'll have announcements to do. Materials management, for the month of April, we sold $3,687.75 in tags and paid $1,176.59. We had 6.55 tons of single-stream recycling and 10.95 tons of garbage. There was a slight charge again this month for contaminated single-stream recycling, which I'm still not 100% sure what that means. But it's getting better, is what they told me, and I was like, okay, thank you.
Well, when you're done, I can explain a little more on that.
Just wrapping it up, we have our spring cleaning sale going on where you buy 10 tags of the same color, you get one free for April, May, and June. And that's all I have. So if you wanted to add on the
I thought we
slightly
might,
contaminated single-stream recycling.
let me stay on the more communities side of things first. I'll hold this up, but we have been advised by the VFW that they'll be holding the Memorial Day Parade as usual on Memorial Day, which this year is Monday, May 28th. It's that kickoff at 10 o'clock from the high school. We all like to march, so get there about 8:45, and we'll meet one more time before that so we can remind you all. But they're going to go with what we now call Parade Route Short. It's we come down West Market, turn left on North Broadway, and head up to Memorial Park. It seems like the crowd can fill in there very well, and it's we do notice that even the Vietnam era veterans have a lot of gray hair and a little bit more difficulty walking and so forth. So it's the shorter route's helpful that way too. I think last year we moved it because it was also a rainy day and try to keep everybody from getting super wet. But we did that. They're gonna those listening on Panda, it'll be the shorter route. So don't sit by the library because you will not see the parade. You should go to the village center more. And they do have some posters and things up. I don't know if Danielle can zoom in on that, but you'll see them somewhere. And like you all know, it's a day that a lot of folks use to start this, quote, summer season, but it's also a day of observance. And the VFW 7765 does a wonderful job up at our park, and it's one of the most meaningful ones you can ever go to, so it's worth coming out and being there and honoring the veterans. But Jen, one thing she was mentioning, when we look at her printout on tag sold and costs, she's got a couple asterisks the past few months, and what it was, we were getting word from where we ship our waste materials, which is Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency. At first, we were trying to decipher what they were doing. They were charging us a little more for, quote, contaminated loads. And at first, we were told that some folks were putting out recycling, single-stream recycling in plastic bags, which therefore the bags themselves don't recycle. So they were calling that whole load, that whole particular bag, contaminated, and they would move over and charge us a full garbage rate, which folks on the board know is $103 a ton versus $20 a ton. So they're trying to show that in their invoices to us. So at first we thought, okay, we just need to remind people, please don't put recyclables in plastic bags, which we could do. But I talked with the director of Ulster County Resource Recovery, and it's kind of important to the board to know this. With international events, you might have heard the Chinese are no longer accepting recyclable materials like they used to. And apparently right now in Australia and Massachusetts, baled single-stream recycling products are just sitting at the docks. Nobody's taking it anymore. And according to the director of Ulster County Resource Recovery, they're actually, the buyers from China are actually going to the various plants looking. They only want non-contaminated coming over, but then they've shut it down in general. Long story short is the whole recycling market is changing drastically, and it looks like we're probably going to have to move back toward the pre-single stream days of commingled, where you can't mix your newspaper with the plastics or glass or the other things. The reason being that the strong market is still in the recyclable paper world, and what's happening is with single stream, you're getting shards of glass or waste product from containers that are dirty getting into the paper product, and it's killing that market too. So the board at Ulster County Resource Recovery was going to vote sometime in late May to see if they're staying in single stream or not. My gut is that they're not going to stay with it because it's just between the international level and the whole change in the market. And they apparently, at Ulster County, you might remember they have something called a MRF. It's a big conveyor belt system where they can separate and do certain things with the product, but they can't do that with single stream. They can only do it when you commingle. So I talked with our highway guys a little bit, and I think we have to strain our brains to remember how we used to do it, but we used to do, early days, we would build a divider and a trailer to split the products inside a trailer. But then we ended up doing it certain weeks are paper and other weeks are the commingled, the plastic, glass, aluminum, and metals. And I think that's the way we'd have to go. But we'll have to wait for Ulster County Resource Recovery to decide what they're going to do. But we have given our guys a heads up that we'll probably go to that intermediate way we used to do it, so we can use a whole trailer full of cardboard and paper, and then another week could be a whole trailer just full of everything but paper and cardboard. So it'll take a newsletter and a couple cycles to get it right. But but it's something totally out of our control, and it's, like, when Jen reads her numbers, we have incredibly high recycling rates in the village. It's just going to be moving it backwards to the older way, but that's the story on that. What else we have, Jen? You're talking anything in the park with your Rhinebeck Legion Band? You want to talk about that at all?
Oh, sure. So normally in the summer, we have a community potluck and concert, usually with Dan Budd's band, and unfortunately, he's not available this summer, but a group called the Rhinebeck Musical Exchange will be playing in July 17th. This is a program that my daughter is actually did, and I think Jay's daughter did as well, where if you're a musically inclined student, you go to Germany for 2 weeks and perform in an orchestra there, and then the following year the Germans come here for 2 weeks and play around here. So the Germans will be coming this summer, and we'll be doing a concert in July in the park. So we will have a concert in the park this summer. It just won't be our usual bluegrass. It'll be about 100 Germans and about 35 locals. So
They sing in German?
I don't know. We haven't gotten their music yet. We don't know what they're playing.
And you're looking at July 27th, were you saying?
I have it written down. I'm on the itinerary committee for that organization, and they are planned to the minute. So let me, I think it's the 17th. Let me just double check. July 17th, which is a Tuesday night, probably 7 p.m. at Abrams Park. And if it does rain, we do have the community center as a backup for them to perform.
So you'll be doing posters or something?
Yeah, we'll get the posters out and do the whole thing, but that's a little bit down the road.
And while we're in the celebrations discussion world, our stage was a center for Apple Blossom Day. And then in line with some plans, we were asking the highway guys to do a little study of it to see if it's ready for more work on Hardscrabble Day. We suspected it had some trouble, and it has trouble, so we're going to do a little dental surgery on it. They had it opened up today, and we're looking at it, and they feel like they can do some work, but we're looking, the reason I'm asking it needs some wood and plywood and different things that hold it all together. And so we're going to reach out to the Sinterklaas people in Rhinebeck, because we lend it to them, and they've offered to share in some materials costs. And then we do have some money in the Hardscrabble account. And then I thought maybe we'd somehow try to figure out a way to raise a little more money to repair the stage, kind of a thing. But the highway guys, a couple of them some of the bosses are on vacation, and they might have a little time in the next 2 weeks or so to attack it a little bit. So if anybody's looking to donate to the stage out there in Panda Land, it does move around. It does events here, ranging from our events in the park to the big street festivals. And when we do send it to Rhinebeck, we do charge them, and they provide us insurance and so forth. But I thought, well, if they want to keep using it, they'll have to help us repair it too. But we might have to have a rock and roll show to pay for the stage to do the big rock and roll show on. But I think that's the news from materials management and celebrations. I think we could hear a little bit about water. Mr. Lang, you ready? And maybe you want to talk too about your LED. Yeah, we're on LEDs too, but
LEDs as well. But first anyway, water. So during the month of April, the water treatment facility treated 5,927,000 total gallons, which is an average of 197,600 gallons a day. In comparison, actually, with last year, that's almost identical to last year. Last year, it was 5,804,000 gallons and 193,000 gallons a day. The real change was between 16 and 17, when we had a significant decrease in usage because of the improvements. 3 bacteriological samples were sent out and analyzed, and all came back fine. And during the month of April, the water treatment plant used 40 gallons of sodium hypochlorite. Average use was 1.33 gallons a day, and that was down from 60 gallons and 2 gallons a day from last year. And if I have the opportunity, I might question why we're using less hypochlorite to treat the same volume of water.
My understanding is, I remember a conversation with the then operator,
Okay.
and when one would turn on the tap, one would get a pretty good whiff of chlorine. And there's a recommended residual that we have to meet from sampling and so forth.
Right.
And we were higher than the than we
Okay,
needed to
so
be.
potentially we were overdosing back in the day, so
Yeah.
now we're...
Yeah, it was a short time there, and it was probably right around then. And
Okay, good.
So they
Well, that
brought
will
it
save
back.
us a few dollars as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Charlie's talking on water. I think I did circulate, the operator did give us the annual drinking water quality report for 2017. Got circulated to the clerk, and she'll put it up on the website. And one of the requirements is that the operator sends it off to Dutchess County Department of Health. And it's our understanding they've got that down there or so forth, right? And, but there really were no changes there. Sorry, Charlie. Did you want to chat about where we are with the LED project, or?
Sure. You had reached out to NYPA,
Yeah.
New York Power Authority, which is now the sort of organizing, facilitating entity for this conversion program. And so we'd reached out to Central Hudson, because one of the first steps is to get a price from Central Hudson for the costs of buying out the light fixture and the armature, that's the connection to the pole. So we have that, and next steps are to coordinate with NYPA on their, I think it's basically a 12-month process to use their purchasing power and contracting abilities to identify a vendor to do the swap out for the LED light fixtures.
Yeah, I was just looking for something, as Charlie was talking. We did get a document from NYPA about a week ago. Just trying to see if we can find it. I sent it to council fairly recently. Let's see. It was, as I recall, 47 pages long. I think I copied you. Did you?
Yes, I did not plow through it all.
Yeah. Let me just find here, because when I copy somebody else, it stores it in a different section here. Let's see.
While you're searching it, the light fixtures that Central Hudson is replacing at present, does that affect our overall cost? Like at the Four Corners, I noticed that there are, I think, LEDs there, and at certain places during the village, there are LEDs that have been replaced. I guess as one goes down, they put a LED.
There are, and generally, Jay, I think that is reflected in the price that they gave us.
Okay.
Because that reflects the units that they've already replaced.
All
And I think, you know, between now and when things are inked and signed, you know, there will not be enough upgrades to change that average price.
Yeah, so quite frankly, the 47-page document was intimidating to me. I was like, holy mackerel. And council hasn't written back, so I don't think he's gotten through it yet either. But it's probably boilerplate stuff, meaning...
I mean, we're not alone in this. I mean, the town of Red Hook is basically, you know, weeks, months ahead of us doing the same process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not sure, I can't find it. But we did, like Charlie said, identify the stranded cost, and it was coming in, Central Hudson gave us that letter, I think it's the $318 per fixture, if I remember right, something around there.
Something around that.
And it pretty much tracked with what we budgeted with those spreadsheets from a year and a half ago or so. It was pretty much the same number. And like Charlie said, the NIPA essentially will offer funding, and they did give us a letter saying they've approved us for funding and so forth. I saw that. But it's a matter of having council read this 47-page document before we take a step here to sign it. But it looks like it's moving along well to me. So, any other thoughts, Charles?
Right, and Courtney Strong and those consultants are still available, to, talk us through issues or provide assistance if we have questions about particular aspects of the programs. So we have resources that we can draw on.
Let me just try one more thing, folks, because maybe we can. I can't find it. But anyway, all right. Who we have next here? Looks like Mr. Deputy Mayor Kowalczyk. Ready to work?
Yes, sir. Let's first start with the Village Green Committee monthly report of April. Current balances of the Village Green Committee's related budget accounts are as follows. Community beautification is $2,124.40. Shade tree contractual, we have a negative balance of $6,350. The Village Green checking account is $4,404.33. The Village Green Committee and community volunteers planted 8 trees and participated in the 2018 annual spring planting and Arbor Day celebrations on April 28th. 19 volunteers, including 5 Bard College students, planted trees on South Broadway, Cambridge Street, Park Avenue, and in Richard Abrahams Memorial Park. I had the privilege of reading the Arbor Day proclamation, and the Village Green Committee and volunteers joined the Red Hook Town Tree Commission for a luncheon at the Red Hook Town Hall. The Village Board of Trustees thanks Village Green Committee Officer David Pearson and Michelle Decker of Decker Construction for preparing the tree sites. She volunteers to help David dig the holes, which are very useful and helpful for the volunteers. We also like to thank the Village Highway Department for delivering the trees and mulch to the sites, and also Red Hook Town Clerk Sue McCann and Village Green Committee Officer Kathy Pearson for organizing the luncheon, and Sarah DeVere from the Bard College Center for Civic Engagement for recruiting and organizing the Bard College student volunteers. Just a couple quick notes. The Hudson Valley Relief 2018 Urban Forestry Workshop, Back to Basics, will be held on Friday, June 1st at the SUNY Orange DeWitt Center in Middletown, New York. Village Green officers wishing to attend can contact me for registration information. And the New York State DEC has issued a notice of available grants. At least $2.3 million in Environmental Protection Fund grants will be available. Communities may request from $11,000 to $75,000 depending on municipal population. And the categories include tree inventories, management plans, tree planting, and tree maintenance. And a webinar was held on May 10th to educate that. And again, applications for this grant are due in July. Any Village Green Committee officer interested in preparing the grant, I'll definitely help out. Should contact me. Busy day planting trees. It went quickly though, very quickly. The Village of Red Hook Highway monthly report of April. The Village Highway Department is currently picking up lawn debris each first and third Monday of the month. And again, residents are reminded to place lawn debris curbside and separate brush, lawn debris, and grass clippings into separate piles, and limit the size of the brush piles to 6 feet by 6 feet by 6 feet, with tree limbs and branches no larger than 6 inches in diameter. Easy Street Cleaning Incorporated did sweep the village streets during the weeks of May 7th through the 18th. So that's all been taken care of and was completed before Apple Blossom Day. A letter was received on April 8th from a resident in Retik Estates to request that the Board of Trustees consider providing better traffic control, signage, in other words, at the intersections of Amherst and Cambridge Drive and at Amherst and Kent. And that's something I guess we could look at a workshop. The village received a memo from the New York State DOT of April 26 regarding the state fiscal year 2018 through 19 Consolidated Local Street and Highway Improvement Program. We call it CHIPS. Also included Pave New York and Extreme Weather Recovery Funding. The Village of Red Hook balances for these programs are as follows. For the CHIPS, we had an apportionment of $40,000 and a rollover from last year of $60,771. And I believe Cindy said that we have a reimbursement coming in for about 60 grand, so that would take care of the rollover. The Pave New York program, we had a rollover from last year of $9,203, and our apportionment for this year was $9,176, leaving us a balance of $18,380. And our extreme weather recovery, our apportionment for this year was $7,183, and our rollover from last year was $7,183, a total balance of $14,366.96. So the total balance for the state fiscal year, DOT funding for the village, as of today, is $133,721.58. That's a hunk of change.
That's a good number.
So 60 grand will be deducted from that, but still, that's,
Go ahead and interrupt you.
yeah.
Cindy, 60, was it that much, the CHIPS submission here?
We had the truck in it.
Oh, that's right, yeah, okay, yeah.
So we should look at also the extreme weather recovery stuff, for maybe the last snowstorm, the one we cleaned the village streets. I mean, anything we can use it for that. I'm sure there's,
Just keep in mind that Pave New York has to be used just for paving.
yeah,
We haven't been paving much.
not with the new water project. So I think we're trying to work on a list for CHIPS. Yeah, that's my next item. So the Highway Department is preparing a list of projects to utilize CHIPS, Pave New York, and the Extreme Winter Recovery Fund. So hopefully Dan is working on that, and we'll come up. I think he did mention some paving projects, maybe in Retik Estates. The Highway Department is preparing a list of street trees in need of either pruning or removal, and this will be a shorter list than last year. So once received, the Village Green Committee will review the necessary actions and make recommendations to the Board of Trustees for consideration. The Dutchess County Transportation Council issued a report of analyzed traffic volume trends over the last 18 years based on the DCTC traffic count data. Most roads had their highest volumes in the years of 2005 through 2007 or 2015 through 2017, and experienced lower volumes in 1999 through 2001 and 2008 to 2010. These patterns reflect the impacts from the economic recession, which began in late 2007 and officially ended in mid-2009. The report cites village streets studied in 2010, 13, and 16. These included Old Post Road, Linden Avenue, Park Avenue, Baxter Road, Broadway, Fifth Street, Elizabeth Street, Firehouse Lane, Market Street. All streets had their highest volume in 2013. The study found that while higher fuel prices tend to discourage travel, the overall economy has a larger impact on travel patterns. Revenue from the sale of scrap metal was received on April 2nd and on April 30th for a total of $805.20. Total revenue generated for this fiscal year is $3,786.60, almost double what we anticipated. Since the inception of the scrap metal, actually quadruple, right? Because we only put 1,000 in.
Yeah.
So we did pretty good. Since the inception of the scrap metal recycling program in September of 2007, $25,998.17 has been generated, and proceeds from this program go toward the purchase of tools and equipment for the village highway, water, and materials management program. Anyone interested in donating scrap metal, residents or businesses, can contact the Highway Department at 758-8600 or the village clerk's office, and the Highway Department will assist property owners by picking up scrap metal upon request. The Intermunicipal Task Force and Red Hook Infrastructure Monthly Report, the Red Hook Sewer Project, Phase 1. Meetings were held on April 6th, 20th, and 27th in the Red Hook Village Building. We looked at the temporary construction easements and permanent service maintenance easements, which are currently being submitted from property owners in the sewer project service area. As of last Friday, or 2 Fridays ago, approximately 50 easements had been submitted and reviewed. I think we're up a little bit more. We have about 135 easements total. The deadline for submissions has been extended to allow corporate boards to pass resolutions to allow an officer to sign and execute the easement documents. Items requested by the USDA Rural Development Letter of Conditions of February 15th are being prepared, finalized, and submitted to USDA, which should be pretty close, right?
I think we had a packet today from,
Bond Council?
Yeah.
Good,
I
good,
didn't
good.
open it, but it went to
I have to
Cindy.
sign those documents and get them back.
Good, that was a big part of it. The basis of design for the Red Hook wastewater treatment plant and septic tank effluent pump sewer system and the Village of Red Hook sewer project plans and specifications had been reviewed by the New York State EFC for compliance with the recommended standards for wastewater facilities and for compliance with the applicable Clean Water State water pollution control regulations. CT Mail is currently preparing responses to the comments made by EFC on March 14th of 2017. And residential and business property owners within the sewer project service area are reminded that questions regarding the project or required documents can be addressed by the village engineer, attorney, Ed and myself, most Fridays in the Red Hook Village Building between 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock. We're faithfully here most times. Also, the telephone conference call was held on April 27th with DEC Regional Director, between our attorneys, engineers, and Ed and myself, and this was to discuss the acquisition of the Red Hook Common Sewage Works Corporation, existing wastewater treatment plant, and the transfer with modifications to increase the discharge capacity of the Speedies permit. The Red Hook Sewer Project Phase 2, a meeting was held on April 6th in the Red Hook Village Building to discuss extending the proposed Phase 1 sewer service area to the southern village boundary and funding the opportunities at a future date. So we're just testing the waters at this point. Red Hook Water Project Phase 2 meetings were held on April 6th to review the work to be completed to decommission the existing Tower Street elevated storage tank and to make final preparations to close on the USDA Rural Development and New York State EFC loans and the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act grants. I think VRI did give us some updates on decommissioning the tower, and we're still waiting for some things, but hopefully that'll progress quickly. Red Hook Phase 3, which is still in the discussion phase. Both Ed and I attended the Wappingers Creek Intermunicipal Council meeting that hosted the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation at the Milan Town Hall on April 27th. EFC presented available funding and application requirements for EFC and the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act, Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, and Clean Water State Revolving Fund grant programs. And then Ed participated in a panel discussion regarding infrastructure challenges and opportunities in rural New York. The event was hosted by Congressional Representative John Faso, and present was the assistant to the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Ann Hazlitt, on the campus of Hartwood College in Oneonta, New York, on April 20th. And you had a good time, right? Good. And on the task force side, both Charlie and I don't know if it's even official yet, Charlie.
Is it official?
I don't know. I don't know if the town board appointed or reappointed us, but Charlie does, and I both sit at the task force representing the village of Red Hook. Task force meetings were held on April 5th, 20th, and 28th in the Red Hook Town Hall, and we reviewed the proposed Red Hook Town Local Law C, which includes formula business regulations, Hamlet Business District for Upper Red Hook food truck regulations, and amendments to the traditional neighborhood district. An informational public meeting and presentation by Michelle Gregg was held on April 10th in the Red Hook Town Hall, and a public hearing for Local Law C I guess it already happened, for May 8th. And we also discussed the status of the Village of Red Hook moratorium on motor vehicle service stations and demolition regulations in the village's GBD. And we reviewed case studies of the Town of Red Hook Planning Board to determine if procedures could be streamlined and less costly. And you attended that one, Charlie.
Yes.
It gave us some valuable insight. And real quickly, the Red Hook Economic Development Committee, EDC, meeting was held on April 25th. Red Hook Town Supervisor Robert McKeon attended. The EDC expressed concerns regarding the underutilization of the committee, and that the EDC needs to clarify its mission to better reach out and attract people and businesses to Red Hook. Supervisor McKeon shared the town board's concern regarding the timeliness and cost of the planning process, and expressed his goal to create greater understanding and sympathy with general concerns over the cost and time and money of the planning process. And they also discussed the EDC consensus points on improving the planning board and board of appeals processes of both the town and the village of Red Hook. There were no ZRC meetings. The Red Hook Town of Red Hook Zoning Review Committee, on the Village of Red Hook Zoning Review Committee, the Red Hook Village ZRC met on April 12th and 25th, March 3rd and 31st, and on April 7th in the Red Hook Village Building. The Village ZRC reviewed zoning regulations in the General Business District regarding motor vehicle service stations and associated retail facilities, as well as demolition of structures in the General Business District. The ZRC also reviewed and responded to comments made by the village's land use attorney of March 30th, and the ZRC submitted their recommendations to the Village Board of Trustees on April 23rd for their consideration. The Community Preservation Fund Advisory Board, there were no meetings, but the current balance of the Community Preservation Fund as of April 30th is $1,018,792.32. And my last report is of the Saltkill Watershed Community. Saltkill Watershed Community meeting was held on April 19th in the Elmendorf, and they looked at the updates on the Bard College Water Lab and Micro Hydro Bard College Dam projects, and heard a presentation entitled Our Rivers on Drugs, Ecological Effects of Pharmaceuticals and Personal Care Products, that was presented by Dr. Emma Rossi, the aquatic ecologist for the Carey Institute of Ecosystem Studies. And that is it.
Well, thank you. Let's see. If we could, Brent, just go back to your highway pages. And you had suggested something which I think we could agree with. When we're looking at those CHIPS, Pave New York, and EWR monies, I think on Thursday when Michelle's here, we can have her pull, with Cindy's help, any and all invoices related to the storm of, the date escapes me, but when we had to
Stella.
clear the, no, Stella was a year ago, so
Oh,
whatever we
disaster
had, because we had like a mirror when we had to do our corner cleaning this year. We could try to submit that into that part of, we got away, it wasn't too expensive, but we could find what we spent there.
And I'm sure the DOT has some guidelines in what those projects, what the money can cover as far as in terms of projects go. And I know Pave New York has to be repaving, and CHIPS has to be a 10-year project, but we have used some of that money for a new vehicle, which is an eligible cost to be
Up to
reimbursed
the
by
CHIPS,
CHIPS.
yeah. But looking at that EWR balance, 14 grand, if we can get, I think the four corner cleanup was 35 or 4,000 this year.
Yeah, we just did it once
Some
too.
salt material, if we see what we can get in there.
But I know we went quite a bit over on materials this year. We're still, I think, looking at the spreadsheet of the budget, we're still under the appropriated amount that we anticipated.
When you aggregate all budget lines for
I mean, it's
snow.
close. It's like
Yeah.
96% expended, but we're still under budget, so it's.
So we're saying we have a total of 133,000, call it 134, round it up a little bit. But 66 is still out there, so we have 70-ish left.
Yeah, about 70 grand.
I know when we're doing the trees and driving around Red Oak Estates, some of the roads there need some help.
Yeah.
Dan has some ideas for
Yeah.
drainage.
For drainage stuff and, for the paved New York and CHIP, so I've asked him to prepare a list of projects for our review, and I know we do have some water projects that we're looking at, but that we've kind of put on hold. Hopefully we'll open those back up, especially on the southern part of the village.
'Cause when we talked to Dan too, I circled item 3, and we recognize the letter was received on April 8th.
I think he had copied on it.
Yeah, I actually threw it in my packet to bring in tonight. What's interesting to me is, speaking of community, like Red Oak Estates, there's really no cut-throughs allowed. You only are really there if you live there or you're visiting somebody there. It's not like you're trying to get through to Route 9G or something. So the one resident that wrote to us was complaining that people I think it's a yield sign now, and he would like it converted to a stop sign. It seems it's a matter of good taste for the neighbors to respect each other there, because they can't see. It's not like it's somebody commuting to work cutting through there or something. But while Dan's looking at Chip's money ideas, I wonder if he can give us. I'll ask him to give us look at that intersection and see, does it warrant some physical change or just signage, or is the signage okay, whatever. But the resident that wrote, you can be assured we're looking at that.
I mean, just for your edification too, Mr. Mayor, I do have the Custom Street Services LLC, which swept the streets, and they gave us a rate per hour, per day, taking 2 to 4 days, and a rate per day, 5 or more days. So they were pretty reasonable. So it was $125 per hour, $900 per day if you're doing 2 to 4 days, which I think was what we did, and then $880 per day for 5+ days. So
Yeah, that was the 125 an hour came to my head, and it was a different company then. It was,
Yeah.
It was, 'cause
Custom Street
the
Service.
bid last month was from Easy Street for $190, and we got it for $125 with a different vendor. Yeah. So that'll show up in your next.
Yep. And then there's a specific budget line
Yeah.
that keeps getting used for other stuff. Very specific.
So anyway, I know a little piece of Benner we've been avoiding.
Yes.
That's going back. It might be a dirt road sooner rather than later, so we should have Dan look at that too. But
I think once the new fiscal year starts up, we'll be looking to move.
Okay, let's move to, we got through some of it already. General business, the school presented, public hearing for moratorium extension. Brent in his report talked about the work our own interim zoning review committee has been doing. I think we circulated to everybody their most recent update in your mailboxes or in some fashion. It looks to me like it's probably a matter best discussed in workshop, which we had one Thursday. But we gave ourselves 6 months. We probably can't get it done by June, but I mean, because we have to have a public hearing to do a change to the zoning code. And there'll be some change in the code, just what it is. It's probably stated here, but we'll work on that as a group. Long story short, we need to give ourselves a little more window of time. So that what we do is, maybe Cindy could tell us when our next meeting in June, what's that date? Is that do you have a?
June 11th.
June 11th. In your packet should be a blank resolution meaning no number, no date on it. Resolution scheduling a public hearing on the proposed local law to extend a moratorium. In speaking with council, even though we went through this to set the moratorium, we have to do essentially the same thing just to extend it. We're thinking 120 days, which is 4 months. And then the council drafted the supporting local law. So what we could do, maybe Mr. Trapp, you feel in the mood for reading that resolution?
Oh, you bet.
Okay. Why don't you do that?
Let's see, which,
The resolution scheduling a public hearing? See that?
yes, here we go.
Okay.
Very good. I'll just start with the whereases, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas proposed local law number 11 of 2018 entitled "A Local Law Placing a 4-Month Moratorium on All Applications and Permits for Demolition of a Structure Over 120 Square Feet and for Establishment, Expansion, or Modification of a Motor Vehicle Service Station in the General Business District" has been submitted to the Village Board of the Village of Red Hook, hereinafter the local law. Whereas local law number 4 of 2017, the village enacted a 6-month moratorium on all applications and permits for demolition of a structure over 120 square feet for establishment, expansion, or modification of a motor vehicle service station in the general business district, which will expire on June 22nd, 2018. And whereas the 6-month moratorium was enacted in order for the village to consider, formulate, and amend its local laws and resolutions in accordance with the village's comprehensive plan, the Greenway Guides, and with the Zoning Review Committee's recommendations, and to reduce the potential adverse effects of the taking of action during the pendency of its planning considerations. And whereas the village needs additional time to review the recommended amendments to its zoning law, and whereas, in accordance with the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQR, the village board is required to determine the classification of the proposed action. And whereas pursuant to 6 NYCRR Section 617.5, parenthetic 30, the adoption of a moratorium on land development or construction constitutes a Type 2 action under SEQR. And whereas pursuant to Section 239M of the General Municipal Law, actions proposing the adoption or amendment of the zoning ordinance or local law must be referred to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for a report and recommendation thereon if they apply to real property within 500 feet of a state road. And whereas the local law will apply to real property within 500 feet of New York State Route 9. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Village Board of the Village of Red Hook as follows. Number 1, the Village Board hereby classifies the local law as a Type 2 action under SEQR. Number 2, the village clerk is authorized and directed to refer the question of the adoption of the local law to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for a report and recommendation thereon pursuant to Section 239M of the General Municipal Law. And number 3, public hearing shall be held on, is that?
We're saying June 11.
6/11? June 11, 2018, at 7 p.m. at 7467 South Broadway, Red Hook, New York, to hear all interested parties on the proposed local law, copies of which are on file with the village clerk. And number 4, the village clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish notice of said public hearing on the local law in the official newspaper of said village on or before.
10 days before, May 30th is a...
Okay,
Like a
so
good day.
May 30th, 2018, which is not less than 10 days prior to the date of said public hearing, and to make all other postings required by law. And number 5, the village clerk is further authorized to directed to provide written notice of the public hearing on the local law to the clerks of all adjacent municipalities by, is that the same?
Always the same day, yeah.
Okay, May 30, 2018, which is not less than 10 days prior to the date of said public hearing. There you have it.
Thank you, sir. So essentially, it's the formal way to set a public hearing and direct the clerk how to put the notices out. So we would date it, today's date up on the top of page 1, which is May 14. And then Cindy, I don't know if you gave us a resolution number there.
11.
Is it local law 11 as well?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Okay.
I thought you said, no, resolution 11, I think it's local law 4.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so somewhere in the body.
First paragraph.
First
Yeah.
paragraph.
So we'll change 11 to 4. Is that right?
Yes, it's
Okay.
resolution 11.
All right, so and then in your packet is what would be after the public hearing, we'd vote on the local law itself to adopt the 4-month extension. But anyway, we're just setting this. So Jay read the resolution. I would offer it as a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thanks. Did you vote, Ms.? Quietly? Okay, thank you. All right. Building department fees implementation. Just to work into it here, we have in various workshops taken data and had multiple discussions comparing what we charge now for things ranging from building permits to abstract municipal search charges and so forth. We had done a few updates and so forth over the past 60 or 90 days, and we've got it to a point where in workshop we were good with it. We edited it up, and that's what's circulated around. I drafted a mother resolution, I think it's in your boxes or in your packets there too. Essentially, we were trying to time it out with the new fiscal year, which would be June 1. So I think tonight would be a good night to vote on it. Just to repeat, in the workshops, we did brainstorm and compare and modified some of the rates, inserted some fees for things we didn't used to charge for. The underlying premise is that we would like that department to become as close to self-sufficient as it can by generating enough revenue to pay for our staff, the contracted vendor staff, and computer costs and different things we have. So that'd be the goal. Like, tonight, Jay read, we took in $1,769, and we seem to be in that $2,000, $1,500, $2,000 range per month. And but the last time we changed rates, quite frankly, I can't remember. Does anybody? It seemed like it was 2005, or was it a long time ago?
A while, yeah.
So I think all of us are pretty much on the same page and ready to work on it tonight.
I did just had one question.
Sure.
Where does garage fit?
Garage.
You've got a line for barns, pole barn, shed, and would it fit there?
Well, let me look. 25 cents a square foot minimum. So you're talking about a detached garage.
Yeah. Something that wouldn't be covered under the house.
I might roll it down toward Mr. Trapp's division there. We could put another slash.
Is that barns, pole barn, shed, or is that a different?
He's
Well, it seems logical that it might go there.
Yeah.
supposed to be pole barn or pole barn?
should be BRARN.
Yeah.
Okay, so-
I don't think it's got anything to do with the college.
Sure.
Wasn't sure.
Good find.
And detached garages, right?
Yes, because I think attached garages should be part of the building permit for the residents.
Attached garages require a greater level of scrutiny during the construction process, whereas detached are typically a lot simpler to deal with. Basically, 2 inspections for the building inspector, foundation, footing, and the framing. It's usually left open. You don't have fire separations, you don't have insulation, and these.
It can be a
sort of
very
things, so
simple
it's
structure.
Easier process.
So Jake, could we all live with it if we put another slash barns, pole barn, sled, slash
Yeah.
detached garage?
Just wanted to get that sorted before I apply.
Well, let me,
In that case, we.
Would barns, pole barn, and shed have any electric and plumbing, whereas a detached garage would have
I mean, a
electric
barn,
and
a pole
possible
barn, or a
plumbing?
shed could just as easily have electric. Maybe not so much plumbing, but then again.
Could have a hose bib, you know.
I mean, I think it's a different matter if you're talking about having an apartment or something in your detached garage. Then it
Yeah,
becomes a
that-
residential
Right, right,
structure.
right.
An
Yeah.
accessory
That's when
apartment.
you would then consider it under residential construction if you were going that direction.
So you okay with that to modify adding detached garages? Sounds like consensus there. What I thought I would do is label the copy I have in my hand Exhibit A and put a date on it or something, so the clerk has something. Let me read the resolution and it'll make sense to you. So, thank you. Increase in fees rates for building and zoning department. Whereas the Village of Red Hook Building and Zoning Department follows New York State Building Code and local zoning code. That sounds correct, right, Jay? Whereas the village incurs expenses as it uses accredited code enforcement officers, zoning enforcement officers, in-house support staff, and related computer programs. Whereas the village board has studied existing fees and found a need to increase the fees and other charges required to keep the department funded and in line with other municipalities. Therefore, be it resolved, effective June 1, 2018, the village will increase its fees for the various permits and other processes as detailed in Exhibit A, as marked and attached. And the clerk is assigned to distribute the new rate sheet to the secretary in the the building/zoning department, have it posted on the village website and any other appropriate locations. I think what I'm trying to do is identify a document there that will become, so it's really the one you have in your packet. So I thought if we call it whatever I said there, Exhibit A, I'm going to handwrite that on this one.
So this will supersede the current one.
Correct, yeah, it'll be, we're saying, effective June 1, the village will increase its fees for the various permits as detailed in Exhibit A, as marked and attached. Any other wording that would be more specific or more helpful? Or essentially, I'm going to say this, effective June 1, will be our rates sheet. And it's not just permit fees, there are other processes there, that's why I use the two types of words. So I would offer it as a motion, Resolution 12. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. How about I give you this, Ms. Shirella, while you've got that? Okay, that's the baby, right there. Let's see. The next one, ZRC review, GBD changes, we already talked about that. Like I said, when I say we talked about, that's where we passed an extension on the moratorium. And then I'm thinking, like we said, we should just sit back and workshop and kick it around a little bit. I think it's 98% there, but we'd want to get everybody's input, and then we can.
Would it be important, especially when we're talking about some of the responses to the attorneys, to have the attorney there to clarify some conceptual information?
I don't think so.
Hey.
I think we could just, we've got the skill set, and I think I know what you might be getting at one point, but I think that's still conceptual right now.
Yeah. All right. Your call.
Okay, thanks. I threw in something in my agenda here. It's not on yours. We've been circulating some things amongst ourselves, but coming up in the near future are deadlines for the CFA application and that's consolidated funding application, which is state money and state programs. And then the county has that, I call it MIG. It's the Municipal Innovation Grant, is like the latest configuration of a county shared services grant.
And community development block grant too, right? Or is that
Yeah, but I know we got something from Ann Saylor the other day.
That was the continuing, not the next year's application. It was the consortium
Yeah, I think she
brought
was,
you into 2021, I think.
yeah, she was referencing, remember that
The-
booklet I talked about where
Yeah.
last year the county with the state mandates had to form a sharing option program, a book. And on a block grant, I think we're still precluded because we're so limited to ADA type stuff, right? And then,
Well, there were some projects kind of hanging in the road, right, on the Four Corners especially. And too bad about those crosswalk things, but
Yeah.
that would have been the fifth one on Benner Road would have been good.
But I don't know if you have any, Brent and I kick around in his reports, he talks about, is there water phase 3, but those are bigger. And on the MIG, we should probably think about what's your pet project, what would you like to see done, and can we throw it into one of these grant ideas? I know.
Is that for zoning?
Well, I think you and I are looking at one word that talked about economic development. I think if you could construe, I think you can, economic development and zoning do go somewhat hand in hand.
Yeah, I do
it's probably
too.
worth a shot. And then, but I was just looking for ideas, with the streetlight project, we'll be borrowing that money. What else do we want to do? We have phase 3 water. We have the guys working on that already, right? Like to try to help somewhere there.
There's a grant application due around October, I think specifically for that one. But phase 2 sewer.
That's the other county project. That's PMG, Partnership for Manageable Growth. It's,
Ed, something that when Brent mentioned the community development block grants, I saw something floating around on Facebook. There was some, I guess it's discussions with the town, and some of the people were concerned about the Challenger Park, the new park, and traffic and things like that. And it went around that the town had come up with $200,000 for this, and I just
We
like to put it
co-applied
out
for
there that we kind of dedicated our $100,000 into that to move forward and help the town, and that was kind of overlooked in that whole discussion. So I just thought it'd be important
Good
to put
point.
it out there.
You might be being a little more diplomatic, but essentially, we deliberately rolled, because we are constrained to really funding ADA type projects anymore. Was it 1 year or 2? I thought we did 2 years of roll.
Was it 2 years?
I think we did 2, which is $200,000 worth of stuff. We deliberately joined forces, and as I understand the town, maybe they didn't win the first time, maybe the only second time that it worked, but we have at least $100,000 of our eligibility we intentionally rolled into their ability to use it. So, and then what else can we build? I know, Jen, what do you want to do? You got your pocket parks, Jenny, pocket, but pardon me?
I want the Key Bank lawn.
But again, the deadlines they vary depending on the grant idea, but or the grant mechanism. But any ideas you can come up with, we could.
I'd still
throw
like
in.
the little pocket park. I've got a soft spot in my heart for that new place out there
Yeah,
before it becomes parking.
yeah. All right, so we got through committee reports. I do need to go to executive session, but George did make some comments. He's all by himself out there tonight. Do you have any more, sir? Okay, good. Pardon me? Yeah, well, it went a little longer than normal, but we do have to go to executive on a personnel matter and collective bargaining matter. So I would offer a motion that we enter for those two purposes, and we will come back, but I don't envision any hot topics, major issues, or significant, or any votes. But if you're free to walk, you're free to hang. But if panic can turn off for a little bit, we leave and we'll come back. We need a motion to pay bills after audit. So is there a second? All in favor? Okay. And then the only thing we do later is we adjourn, but right now we have a motion to move to executive session. The board will be leaving, going to executive, and coming back with no vote projected, and we will then adjourn our meeting, close our meeting. So if Panda gets that, you have that, and we will retire to an executive session. Good evening.